Yes, we're going. Right, evening everybody. It is Sunday the 8th of January, so as you can tell I'm thrilled to be back at work tomorrow. So I'm going to go through 3 tonight because I need to upload 1 straight away, and I want to get a little ahead of the game because I've got lots of planning to do for the 21st of Jan. So I shall start with the one that I was going to finish off on Friday night and never got around to because I was too tired. So we're going to do quite a bit of travelling tonight. Because the other 2 are pretty distant. So having completely ballsed up and for some reason thought possibly, to be honest, I had absolutely no idea because as you know my geography is pretty terrible, that the bit of sea between Finland and Sweden might be the Bering Strait. It's not. As Triple Cap, one of the commenters on YouTube very kindly pointed out. Thanks mate. Yes, we're going to go down through from Sweden where we did McMyra. We're going to go through Norway and then we're going to go down to Holland, which is where this is from. And this is a very kind donation from my good friend Ollie Chilton, who sent me this probably because he's got some sitting on his desk, I guess, because he works with the Whisky Exchange, and this is actually a Whisky Exchange exclusive bottling. But to be able to get hold of any Millstone for me is, I've got to take what I can get. I'm not going to hold out for the standard Millstone because it's not easy to get hold of at all. So the distillery itself was set up in 1975 by a guy called Fred van Zwiedam in a place called Balen-Nassau in Holland, obviously, and it was a distillery that was sort of doing whiskey as well as sort of other spirits as well, but they do concentrate on whiskey, and it's very traditional. It's kind of like almost stereotypical in that if you read about the distillery, they use windmills to mill the barley to create the initial mash and all of this lot. So it expanded in 1989 because it was getting a pretty good reputation. Apparently it was quite a hard start. It was very difficult for them to kind of get going, and his wife was sort of helping out, and it was all hands to the pump mill, all hands on deck. But it took off. It expanded in 1989. It's now run by the 2 sons, Patrick and Gilbert, and I don't have an awful lot of information about the distillery. It's pretty small scale, so it's not like there's loads of information about it, but the impression I get is that it's pretty highly regarded. So I am quite looking forward to this. Now, they do have a single malt, but this particular one is a rye whiskey. It's a 10-year-old. It's Jan 2004 to September 2014 that's been matured in American oak, and it's released at cask strength. Now, their first whiskies were actually released in 2007, so the whiskey side of it sort of isn't old. It's not been going since the 70s. It was kind of like neutral spirits and brandies and liqueurs, a bit like some of the Luxembourg and all this lot that we've done previously. But they really sort of went for the whiskies as an independent line and an independent product from everything else they were selling from 2007 onwards. So I've got some water ready because this is at cask strength as well. This is 58.6%. So it's going to have a bit of a kick, but obviously being a rye whiskey, it's slightly unusual. Rye whiskey is obviously quite big in America, so it would be interesting to see how this compares, almost in terms of looking at this as a comparator to American whiskey rather than Scotch or anything like that. So, Ollie, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate this. That is one hell of a colour on it already. So it's American oak cask, but I'm guessing it's quite possibly first fill, having had bourbon in it previously, or an equivalent of, because that is really, really dark colour. I absolutely love that colour. So 58.6, so I've got to bear that in mind when I'm nosing it. Oh, that is good. I like that a lot, even with such a high alcohol percentage. And it really is, this just brings back the run of 40 American whiskies that I did all in one go. It's really concentrated, classic American whiskey nose aromas that I'm getting. It's full on, really rich, heavy, intense fruitcake, packed full of stewed dark fruit. that really dark, almost black fruitcake that you get at Christmas, not the lighter style where it starts to get a little bit towards more Pantone, that sort of thing. But it's really concentrated. I mean, honest to God, if you put this in front of me and didn't tell me where it was from, I'd go, yeah, American. Something, you know, rye heavy, because it's got that really good sort of almost cinnamon, almost chili powder spiciness to it. There is that kind of, but the thing is, I wouldn't have even picked this at 58.6. You know, I'd say 50 max. It really is. There's such richness to it. There isn't really much of a fire from the alcohol. But you could quite easily go, oof, stag, something like a barrel-proof Elijah Craig or something like that. It really has all those characteristics. If you like American whiskies, this is going to float your boat big style. And if you put this on, say, a bourbon tasting, or did a bourbon night, or got a group of friends together, I have not even tried this yet, but I'm just basing this on the nose, but if you got a load of people together that did a bourbon tasting, and I'm going to tell the British Bourbon Society group that I'm a member of on Facebook to watch this video, and I'm basically saying to you people that are in the British Bourbon Society, there's a big chunk of them down in London that tend to get together, is if one of you can get hold of Millstone from the Whisky Exchange, if they've got any left, and you're looking at 85 quid a bottle, this is what the bottle looks like. Cash strength, so it's obviously going to go a bit further. Sneak this into one of your get-togethers and don't tell anyone what it is, because I am fooled. I instantly am just thinking American whiskey, and really, really good American whiskey. It's got that lovely, rich, unctuous sweetness to it as well. Right, shall I actually get around to trying it? Might be an idea. And even then, even on the palate, I wouldn't say it's 58.6. The spiciness isn't quite as intense, but it's there. There's an element of chili powder. There's quite concentrated nutmeg and cinnamon, not quite cloves, but nearly there. It's a little sweeter. It's not a dry spiciness, and it's not a spicy spiciness. It's not kind of like cloves and cardamom and that sort of thing where you're getting more savoury. There is the sweetness in there as well. There's a lovely thick mouthfeel to it as well. Really, really rich and unctuous, but the rye spiciness kind of lifts everything. It's got a slight sourdough element to it as well, which is going to be that rye. I'm not sure if it's quite got the depth of something like Stag or Eagle Rare or something like that, where it's a barrel-proof bourbon or a barrel-proof rye whiskey from the States, which has, I don't know, it kind of has a bit more technical finesse about it. But this is not far off. Don't get me wrong. This is loads of flavours that I really, really like. I'm going to take one more little sip and then I'm going to add water to the rest of it. It's got that spiciness, and it's that rye spiciness that sometimes gets a little bit too dry for me, but this is just about the right amount of sweetness and smokiness, but smokiness as in like a smoky chili rather than smoky peaty either, that sort of thing. I'm talking like the smokiness you get from chili powder, that sort of dry smoke. So I'm going to add water to it. I mean, honest to God, you try this blind, you'd say, yeah, it's either a rye heavy bourbon or it's a rye whiskey. And to be honest, I think you'd almost go with a rye heavy bourbon with the sweetness that's in there. It's not quite got the intense spiciness, the intense dry spiciness of a straight rye whiskey. You could argue that actually this is bourbon that's got quite a high rye content rather than being straight rye, so it's interesting. Okay, let's just see if I think I would need to put a couple more drops in. I'm not convinced I've got quite enough, just to see if it opens it out or whether adding the water actually dampens everything down. I'm hoping it opens it out a little bit more, but it didn't really feel tight. It didn't feel like anything was being masked. It certainly didn't feel like it was 58.6% alcohol. It's there, it's knocked down ever so slightly. What it does is it makes it much more drinkable in terms of with, you know, the intensity of the alcohol percentage, and it does make it, you've got to work with it a little bit to drink it. This does make it a bit more sippable, shall we say, but it loses a little bit of its characteristics. However, I do think this is absolutely brilliant because it's bang up my street of the type of flavours that I like. It's not too dry, not too spicy. It's got the sweetness and that rich, dark fruitcake that I love from bourbon whiskies. And to say it's Dutch is just like, wow, they've done a fantastic job. You know, whoever's selected this, whether it's the Whiskey Exchange or they've been given this as this is your stock, but I think it's fantastic. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And from what I'm reading from comments about the rest of their range, I get the impression it's well worth looking out for Millstone. So if you can, because I don't think there's going to be a huge amount of it around, but if you can find it, it's worth checking out because it sounds like, the impression I get is that they are definitely getting some care and attention. So it's Millstone, it's from the Zuidam distillery. Zuidam is the actual name of the distillery, but Millstone is the brand of single malt whiskies. Although I think, crap, I can't remember, because I did the research a couple of days ago and I didn't write this bit down, but I think there's another like brand name of whiskies that they do. Forget it, but go for Millstone. And if you are wanting to do an American whiskey tasting and you want to throw a spanner in the mix, do it blind, stick that in, because that really is, yeah, that's going to fool a lot of people in a very, very good way indeed. Right, quick rinse out and I shall get on with the second. Cheers.